Hello, welcome to our presentation on parking tickets. My name is Justin Small, and I'm a staff attorney with Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County. Before we get started, a brief disclaimer. This presentation is intended to provide general legal information and education only. It is not intended to be taken as legal advice or to establish a lawyer-client relationship. This presentation covers information on the laws and regulations of the state of California at the time it was recorded, which is November 2024. Okay, so let's go over our agenda today. First, we're going to talk about the general aspects of parking tickets and how they differ from traffic tickets. We're going to talk about the impact of unpaid parking tickets, and then we're going to go through the process of how to contest a parking ticket. Finally, we're going to talk about some options when you've been found at fault for a parking ticket, including enrolling in a low-income payment plan and the Community Assistance Parking Program for parking tickets within LA City. To start, let's differentiate between traffic tickets and parking tickets. So first, traffic tickets are infraction or misdemeanor level vehicle code offenses. The tickets are going to be issued by law enforcement officials, and they are adjudicated in traffic court and heard by traffic court judges or commissioners. They can be paid or contested in the venue of traffic court. Traffic tickets can lead to criminal consequences depending on the offense. If it's a misdemeanor offense, that is a criminal offense that you're entitled to representation for. And if not addressed, they can lead to additional consequences such as having a warrant being issued for your arrest, as well as having additional criminal charges filed. Parking tickets, on the other hand, are not infraction or misdemeanors. They are administrative citations. They can be issued by law enforcement, but are more commonly issued by government agencies, usually the parking enforcement or Department of Transportation of a city. They are adjudicated in administrative hearings, which means they are not heard in traffic court and they are not heard by traffic court judges. They can be paid or contested through a process of administrative review. They do not have any criminal consequences, but you can incur additional financial penalties if unpaid. So the takeaway here is to understand is that traffic tickets, they are more serious offenses. They can have criminal consequences. Parking tickets do not have criminal consequences, but because of that, they have less protections in terms of how you can contest them. Traffic court has more protections, administrative process and administrative hearings, less protections, but it has to do with the severity of the offense. So parking tickets, because they're less serious, have less protections. Traffic tickets, because they're more serious, have more protections. So what happens if I don't pay my parking ticket? One truism you'll hear sometimes is that parking tickets are unenforceable, or if you don't pay them, nothing happens, and that's not actually true. While they don't have criminal consequences, they do have other collateral consequences, such as being added to your vehicle registration if you don't pay them. So, for example, if you have a parking ticket and you don't pay them and they get sent to collections, one of the things the city will do is they will then assess that on top of your vehicle registration for the next year. So the next time you need to go to the DMV and pay to renew your vehicle registration, you will have to pay the additional amount of the parking ticket plus any late fees in order to get your vehicle registration renewed. And if you don't, you won't be able to do so. So it's a way to prevent you from driving if you don't pay your parking tickets. Additionally, if you have 5 or more unpaid parking tickets, in some municipalities, your vehicle can be towed even if it's lawfully parked. We have a separate presentation on poverty tows. Now, just as a point of reference, this form of vehicle tow is currently being litigated, so it is an open question whether or not this will remain a valid reason to have your vehicle towed. But it is just important to understand that not addressing your parking tickets can have these consequences beyond just the ticket itself. So, how do we contest a parking ticket once we've been issued one? There's generally going to be 3 levels of review or appeal. 3 levels of review, 2 levels of appeal. The first is going to be an initial review. Now, one thing that's a little tricky is that every municipality handles their parking tickets slightly differently. So the first thing to do is to identify where your parking ticket was issued, and then go to either, on the ticket itself, there'll be information, or if you don't have the ticket, going on the website of the city, for example, the city of Los Angeles or the city of Burbank or Glendale, and actually going to the Department of Transportation parking enforcement and following all of the instructions on there. But as we said, the first level of review is called an initial review, and it needs to be made 21 calendar days from the date the citation was issued. The review can be made, request for review can be made online, over telephone or mail, or in person. This type of review is not a hearing. It is just going to be just as it sounds, a review by an official to see if the reason your vehicle was cited, whatever the parking violation was lawful. So if you have any sort of written statements you think would be helpful to show why you believe the ticket was issued in error, or you have photographs or any sort of evidence, you can submit it at the time you're requesting your initial review. But it's just going to be looking at whatever information you provide, as well as the ticket itself, to determine whether or not it was lawful. If it was, the initial review will be upheld, which means the parking ticket still stands and you'll be responsible for paying for it. And if not, it will be dismissed and you will not need to take any further action. If it is upheld at initial review, you do have the ability to now then request an administrative hearing, which needs to be made 21 calendar days from the date of the initial review decision. So 21 calendar days or 3 weeks from the parking ticket to request the initial review, 3 weeks or 21 calendar days to request an administrative hearing after that initial review is upheld. And you may, so the one thing that's a little tricky about administrative hearings themselves is that you will need to generally pay the full amount of the ticket as a collateral to request the hearing. If you can't afford to pay the parking ticket to request the hearing, there are prepayment waivers that you can submit showing your inability to afford to pay for the parking ticket to request the hearing, but you'll need to show that either through statements of income, pay stubs, or any sort of proof of public benefits that you might receive that shows why it would be difficult for you to afford to pay this to request the hearing. Once you do that, you will then have a hearing date set. And again, similarly to before the initial review, you must submit why you're contesting, what you think the evidence is, and you must bring any sort of written declarations or anything related to your evidence for showing why you think it should be reversed on the day of the hearing. Now, again, this hearing is not going to be in traffic court. It's going to be heard by a hearing officer, and it's generally going to be at a department within the city of which the parking citation was issued. So for LA City, there are specific office buildings for the Department of Transportation Parking Bureau, and you would go to one of those to have the actual hearing. If after your hearing, it is still upheld, you will be responsible for paying the full amount of the ticket. You do then finally have the ability to appeal it to court. And that is within 30 calendar days of the hearing examiner's decision. So that's the decision from that second level administrative hearing. There is a $25 filing fee. Fortunately, there's no way to waive that. So you can, you'll need to make payment with them. And then if upheld, the appeal of the payment will become due within 30 calendar days. So that is unfortunately kind of the end of the line there once you've gone. But if you believe as though you think that a traffic court judge, there's some sort of evidence that's being considered or not being considered by the hearing officer, you do have a right to have it seen before a traffic judge or commissioner at the third level. And again, need to just request that and make that filing and pay the $25 filing fee within 30 calendar days of that decision at the second level. So let's talk generally about strategies to contest. The first is definitely to document immediately. So for instance, if you notice your vehicle is parked somewhere, gets a parking ticket, take photos, take contemporaneous photos of your vehicle to show that it was properly parked, or for whatever the reason they say the ticket was issued, that was an error. Review the parking ticket itself to see if there are any sort of procedural deficiencies. Perhaps there was a wrong date or some sort of error in terms of how the person who issued the ticket put the information down. And then finally, go and look at the municipal code or the statute you're alleged to have violated to see if there's any excuses in the language. For example, emergency circumstances can be an excuse to park somewhere that you're not allowed to be. There is also a special defense if your vehicle was stolen at the time the ticket was issued. So if you can show proof, usually a police report, that your vehicle was stolen and that it wasn't in your possession at the time the parking ticket was issued, that is another way to get your parking ticket dismissed. So, unfortunately, if you are not successful in contesting your parking ticket, you need to make a payment. There is both the option for a low-income payment plan for somebody who is an indigent individual, and it caps payments generally at $25 per month. You need to request this within 120 calendar days before being able to be enrolled. But if you're outside of that time window, you can always consider, if you are somebody with a disability, making a reasonable accommodation request to the city, explaining why your disability prevented you from being able to request the payment plan within that 120-day window. I mean, generally, cities are fairly reasonable and will allow you to enroll. So it never hurts to ask, even if you're outside of that window, or even if you're not somebody disabled and not making a reasonable accommodation, you can still ask them if they'd be willing to allow you to enroll because, again, you're offering to make payment. And so that's better than not making payment. Finally, there is one program that I'd like to highlight within LA City. So this is a situation in which you have a parking ticket within the city of Los Angeles, and you are somebody who is unhoused and receiving service and case management through the LA County system. And that means you need to have an HMIS number. That's a specific tracking number related to that sort of case management within the LA County. If all of those things are true, that you have a parking tickets within the city of Los Angeles, that you're currently unhoused, receiving case management, and have an active HMIS number, you might be eligible for this community assistance parking program, which allows you to convert the amount of money owed in parking tickets into community service hours. The number for the community assistance parking program is down here. If you are unsure whether or not you have an HMIS number, they might be able to help you in terms of locating that. But again, this is for individuals who are currently unhoused and help with the pay with parking. If that does not apply to you, then the previous slide regarding the low-income payment plan would be the best option. Thank you so much for watching this presentation. And just last I'd like to show is that for anybody who's looking for what the city of Los Angeles is, as you might be aware, it is a kind of a hodgepodge through the county. So the city of Los Angeles covers all of the colored in areas. You'll see that there are certain cities that are carved out of the city of Los Angeles. And so that last slide around the community assistance parking program only applies to these areas that are colored in and not the areas that are in the gray. Thank you so much for watching this presentation.